Nick shit.
Come on, Gilmer.
Come on, Gilmer. You ain't shit. Get on the bus.
Hi, and welcome back to Rate That Album, a weekly podcast where myself, Joseph Fremming, and my good friend, Paul Muad'Dib, we discuss an album, and we rate it, and we talk about the highs, lows, and sometimes the middles. Paul, how are you doing?
Oh, dandy, Joe.
Audience, you hear Paul is a little upset because this week we are delving into a real shit show of an album. 1987's Momentary Lapse of Reason by none other than Pink Floyd. My favorite band and one of the worst albums I've ever heard in my life.
It is also in my top favorite band. I would put it at number 2. I'd put it at number 2. It was number 1. It's now number 2.
Well, yeah, after you listen to Music from the Elder, Kiss just skyrocketed.
We're gonna circle back to that towards the end, sir.
Shall we get into this, Paul? Shall we discuss Lawsuit, the album?
Oh, God. Yeah, I'll let you start. You know, I'm going to let you take this. Both you and I talked about this off-air, audience. Both Joe and I are, like, Pink Floyd fanatics. We've read documentaries, things like this. So there's a lot that went on with this album. So I might chime in as Joe tells the story, but don't go anywhere because the story of this album is insane.
Yes. So it's the mid-'80s. The last album Pink Floyd has released was in 1983. It's the Final Cut. Basically a Roger Waters solo album. If you look at the album art, it even says, by Roger Waters, performed by Pink Floyd. Like the album we're going to discuss, both of these should have just been labeled solo albums, because that is essentially what they are. By the time, I believe it's in the 1986, after some unsuccessful attempts at solo work, David Gilmour and Nick Mason want to get the band back together, which is funny because The Wall, Pink Floyd's The Wall, hugely successful, destroyed this band. Destroyed them. They fired longtime keyboardist founding member Richard Wright.
Joe, why did they fire him?
Cocaine. Drug abuse.
He was a massive coker, and they couldn't kind of keep him on target.
Yeah. But funny fact, they hired him as a touring musician for the live shows, and he's the only one of Pink Floyd who made a profit off the Wall tour.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
So we're going now to the mid-'80s. Like I said, Gilmour and Mason want to get the band back together. And Roger Waters has no interest. He says Pink Floyd's a spent creative force, which, especially if you listen to this album, and, you know, I know you're a fan of his solo work, but Roger Waters' 80s solo projects, everybody in this band was a spent creative force. What they do to get Waters back on board, like what anybody wants to do when they want to get an old friend to get together, to hash things out, is they threaten a lawsuit. So what the lawsuit basically says is, since they're under contract, Waters is stonewalling them from putting out another album, which would result in Waters being sued by the record label and his bandmates, which he said would have ruined him. He decides to step away. He officially leaves the band, which Gilmour and Mason interpret as means they can go forward. This is not what Roger Waters intended.
No. And I want to point out here that the true only founding member of the band at this point left is Nick Mason. I want to point that out.
He's the only one who appears on every single album. Although his appearances on this album we're discussing is minimal at best.
Minimal at best.
So,
yes.
This ensues lawsuits over who owns the name Pink Floyd, who has the rights to continue on. It's pretty ugly, to the point where on Roger Waters' solo tours, he was selling T-shirts that said "Which one's pink?" I agree. David Gilmour has countered over the years that just claiming you are Pink Floyd, which Roger Waters was kind of claiming, is absurd, and I agree, because this is a band that there's two important elements here. One is the visionary, and the other is the music.
Mm-hmm.
Waters was the visionary, Gilmour was the music, and it worked very, very well. I mean, obviously, they're one of the biggest bands of all time.
And I want to point out that in the beginning of Pink Floyd, neither one of these two men were visionary anything.
No.
Or musically anything.
No, Syd Barrett, by this time, long in seclusion, dealing with his mental health issues. He coined the name. He was the innovator of what, eventually evolved into their sound. In fact, he was a childhood friend of David Gilmour's, and, taught him, they taught each other how to play guitar as young men. And that's another element of Pink Floyd that I think people need to understand is everybody in this band, they weren't like childhood friends, like, say, the Beatles or, a lot of other bands. It's usually like a group of friends getting together. These were people who really just met each other in college. So it's not like they have like a whole lot of familiar bonds between them.
And correct me if I'm wrong. Now, there has been a lot of books and documentaries written and unauthorized biographies written about Pink Floyd. And my understanding is that they also weren't the nicest to each other at all during touring.
No, they on the wall they had their trailers were all like in a circle, each facing in the opposite direction, so they didn't have to see each other. I mean, a lot of that comes from the recreating of the wall, and we could get into that down the road when we actually discuss
the wall.
Ever do a rated album that wall, because that's a whole can of worms. But at this point, everything between Gilmour and Waters is just on the fritz, and with the idea of them continuing on. This creates lawsuits of Waters suing the band over, like I said, who is the intellectual property owner of Pink Floyd. Really ugly stuff. As this is going on, Gilmour's recording these demos. And he's unsure if this is going to be a third solo album or a proper Pink Floyd album. The label initially says, you're going to sell more copies if you call it Pink Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
So he decides, okay, we will do that then, which again creates a more legal hurdle for them down the road. And they bring in Bob Ezrin. Bob Ezrin, if you remember, he's a gentleman from Music from the Elder by Kiss. He's an erratic kind of guy, and he has visions for how albums should sound, and they're not always good. And at this point, he's being courted by Waters and Gilmour. This time, Roger Waters is recording Radio Chaos. Ezrin sides with Gilmour. He's like, it's easier for him to make a Floyd album with David Gilmour than it is Roger Waters, which, musically speaking, yes.
Yes.
Gilmour and Richard Wright were very much the music of Pink Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the problem here is we don't have a creative visionary. We don't have a vision. Long story short, we end up with them recording an album of synth pop bullshit, almost masqueraded as a concept album, which it very much is not.
Mm-hmm.
Musically, it's not the strongest. It does have its moments. Lyrically, it shits the bed. And this is what happens. We can get into it, but basically, if you're going to continue on Pink Floyd, you got to find another lyricist, because Gilmour, for the life of him, cannot write.
And You have to find someone that can. Okay. Well, we'll get in because I still want to stay in the history of this. I want to talk about the music of it when we get there. But you're absolutely right. Yes, you got to find. You have to bring someone in that's not been doing blow with members of Kiss for 9 years.
Yeah. I also want to state in a meeting for this album. A CBS Records representative tells Gilmour and Ezrin the music doesn't sound like a fucking thing like Pink Floyd.
Right. And that's a problem when we just talked about, well, musically, Roger Gilmour and Rick Wright were the music of it. So there's something else that's getting lost there, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, not only that, but I want to bring up the point that at this time, prior to this album, both Waters and Gilmour put out solo albums called Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, where Roger Waters brought aboard Eric Clapton to the guitar work and tour with that. And he did another like big stage show for it, like he did with The Wall. And Gilmour did this album About Face, and the poor ticket sales on Gilmour's end caused him to stop his tour. Meanwhile, Roger Waters was getting less people going to his things. He actually went on he was actually made enough money where he took Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking on a second trip, and CBS Records was like, "We're out, man. We want a Pink Floyd album."
Yeah. So the label wants another Pink Floyd album.
Yep.
Again, and for him to not be sued into oblivion, Waters had to officially leave the band.
Mm-hmm.
So this is pretty much the story. And the legal disputes went on even after this album was released. They settled it out of court. It's still a major sticking point. Basically, this album, my guess is if Gilmour hadn't done this, we might have gotten another proper Pink Floyd album down the road.
Yes, I completely agree with that.
That's a big might, considering Roger Waters and how frayed their relationship were. But yeah, so this is essentially Gilmour's third solo album. It sounds like a solo album. When talking about the contributions, Nick Mason and Richard Wright's hired on as a session musician because of legalities, again, with all the lawsuits going on.
Mm-hmm.
And their playing is minimal on the album. It's just, Gilmour said they were catatonic. Mason took issue with that. This is an album in Pink Floyd's name only. I'll be a little more forgiving when it comes to Division Bell and Endless River, because at least you have 3 of the 4 main guys from the golden era, at least as full-time members contributing music.
I give Division Bell, if we ever do it, we'll talk about it, but I give Division Bell more of a Pink Floyd pull just because Rick Wright was writing on it.
Yeah.
Because Rick Wright was, back in the beginning of Pink Floyd, it was Rick Wright and Sid Barrett. Those were the 2 main writers. And you can feel Rick Wright's writing a little bit in Division Bell.
Yeah.
You don't feel any of that here. As a matter of fact, the only member of the Pink Floyd group that gets any writing credits at all on this album is Gilmour only.
Yep. And he is not a strong lyricist. He commits a pretty big dick thing in that he makes them reminiscent of older songs. And we'll get into that here. But it's a
big FU.
Yeah, this album's a mess. It's a legal mess. It was birthed out of a lawsuit, inspired many more.
And some of the other more lawsuits was Roger Waters tried to get the name taken away, and he lost that lawsuit. What
happens when you leave a band? You don't really have much ground to stand on.
Nope. So yeah, it's just, and again, what a label company wants, a label company gets. And if you're a Roger Waters solo fan, that should have resonated with you a little bit.
Yeah. So here we are. And again, it wasn't even resolved until after this album came out, which is, this is it's probably the darkest period in this band's history. It's also the most embarrassing, I would say.
Uh-huh. Uma Guma wasn't this bad, dude.
No. And so let's talk about that. There's Floyd albums where I'm not particularly fond of, but they have elements I can appreciate. Uma Guma's live album is solid.
Yep.
It's not the best recorded, but given the time and where these guys were career-wise, it's not surprising there wasn't a high-quality recording.
Yep.
Adam Heartmother, I'm not a huge fan of, but I can at least, I appreciate Fat Old Son and some of the other stuff.
I personally love Adam Heartmother. I love that album, but that's me.
Yeah. More didn't really have a whole lot, but there's elements on there I like.
Yep. More. There's another one too. Obscured by Clouds has some good songs on it, but it's not a consistent album.
Well, that's a movie soundtrack.
It's a movie soundtrack along with More. More was a movie soundtrack. Yeah.
And they also did Zabriskie Point too.
I thought Zabriskie Point. Oh yeah, that's right. Yep. And that was that's technically unreleased.
Well, they officially released it in the 90s. Late 90s. I bought it. It was like limited edition CD with like a lot of outtakes of Floyd of that era that are really interesting. So if you ever come across it, I'd highly recommend it because it's really interesting seeing where they are. But when it comes to Momentary Lapse of Reason, I'm hard-pressed to find a good song. And which is rough because of all the albums we've done, we can at least find one.
Okay.
And a lot of this, I think, may be coming with baggage. You and I have Floyd baggage with this. Paul and I have been hating on this album since high school.
We sure
which is,
have.
Over 20 years ago. The closest song I can think of that I slightly enjoyed was On the Turning Away.
Okay. See, now I have a different one that I slightly enjoy, and that is One Slip.
Oh, man, I hated One Slip.
I don't mind that one as much.
Oh, you love the Michael Jackson Thriller breakdowns in that?
There is that, but just the chorus, the hook there, it kind of there's something about it that just twinges just a tiny spark of Pink Floyd nostalgia to me, and I can't place my finger on it, but I'm just like, ugh, there's something I'm hearing in there that is actual legit Pink Floyd to me. Now, let's also talk a little bit about the fact that pretty much Pink Floyd pride themselves on being a concept album band.
Yes.
Every album to them in some way after Barrett left was a concept album. More was that. Now, Uma Guma was interesting. I just want to talk a little bit about that because, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but my understanding of reading some of the things of Uma Guma was outside the live disc. That was basically like okay, we're all going to write something, and whoever writes the best stuff is going to become the leader of the ship.
Kind of. It was put together piecemeal, very much. Nobody was really comfortable. They didn't have a leader. Waters doesn't become the leader and the visionary until Dark Side of the Moon, where he just says, fuck it, I'm taking control.
Mm-hmm.
Uma Guma, it was them trying to do like 4 solo albums on one. It was basically their attempt at doing a White album.
Yep.
So that's how that went. And it's not their strongest, but it's not this bad. It's
no.
So let's talk about this. Let's talk about why this was kind of sold as a solo, not as a concept album. And it begins with Signs of Life, which kicks this album off, which has these sound effects. It sounds like there's it's an intro that's 4 minutes long, and it has a lot of like sound effect elements of like water on a dock. So given Pink Floyd's history, you would assume this is the intro of a story, or at least a theme.
Yep.
You know, The Wall had a story. Darkseid had themes for their concept. After this song, there is none of that.
There's attempts at it. And I want to point out that at the time, Gilmer was said that when he was during the making of it, he wanted to approach a collection of songs without a thematic link. When that went over like a lead balloon, he changed his tune and said, well, the album's called Momentary, Lapse reading. All these songs are about a mistake.
Yeah, this whole album was a mistake, Paul.
Like when you think about it, maybe it's the ultimate concept album.
It's a very meta concept album.
Yeah. Is this the first meta concept album?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. So Signs of Life, which I like, I don't mind.
I don't mind it either. Signs of Life and On the Turning Away, and some other elements we'll kind of get into. They're all right, but they're recycled ideas from better albums.
Previous. Yep.
Yeah, there's like some instrumental stuff on here. I think it's in Signs of Life where it's like Gilmore's playing these like very like nice acoustic, kind of haunting little melodies, and I'm like, oh, I liked it better when it was Shine On You Crazy Diamond.
Yes. And
On the Turning Away, it's like I like this better when it was the chorus to Comfortably Numb.
Right. Yeah. On the Turning Away is really Comfortably Numb Part 2, done by a dollar store version of David Gilmour. And Signs of Life, like I like that one because I can hear the Rick Wright chords. Yes, that is very right. I miss, we'll get into that, but Learning to Fly is garbage. I'm sorry. I know it gets a lot of airplay. Again, it's not a Pink Floyd song.
No, this is a very fine David Gilmour solo song.
Yep.
If it was sold as a Gilmour solo song, I'd probably like it a lot more. And that's where the Pink Floyd baggage really
You and I comes in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because there are songs on here, really to my mind, 3 songs, I guess, 3 songs that could be and have been are the hits, which is Learning to Fly, One Slip, and On the Turning Away. Those are the ones that you hear in radio play. When I hear Learning to Fly, though, I have to turn it off because I have that Pink Floyd baggage. If this had been on About Face, I probably would like it.
Yeah, I would probably say it would probably be one of his strongest solo songs.
Well, and the thing is,
don't get me wrong. And I think people are going to misconstrue this because I'm really shitting on Gilmour, but this is a Gilmour album. I like a lot of his solo stuff. I think his first solo album is probably his best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, About Face?
Yeah, no, David Gilmour.
David Gilmour. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
There's No Way Out of Here is probably his best song he ever wrote.
Yes. I have that on playlists. I love that song. No Way Out of Here is amazing.
I do not like About Face. I actually hate that album.
I had them flipped. That's my apology. I had them flipped. I've been looking at so many different albums getting prepared for this one. Yes.
So
Some Way Out of Here should have, like, if that was on here, that would have been epic to me.
Yeah, that would have saved About Face a little bit for me. I mean, at least I'd be like, at least there's one good song on here. Mm-hmm. That album suffers from a lot of the production issues I have with this, and it's a very 80s sounding album. Now let's talk about this, because Pink Floyd has a very distinctive sound. Mm-hmm. They go back to it with Division Bell, and then with The Endless River. Endless River being the only Gilmour era led Floyd album that I actually like.
Yes. And to be true, that's more of their Beatles Let It Be album.
Yeah, and it's also musically it's reminiscent for me because I love Obscured by Clouds.
Mm-hmm.
It's very reminiscent of that. Like and it's instrumental, and I love Floyd instrumental so much. I have bootlegs from high school of like their live stuff in the 70s before Darkseid, and it's phenomenal.
And see, that's why I love Adam Hart Mother, because it's essentially just a 28-minute instrumental, and it just takes you all these places.
Yeah, it's good. I think Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast ruins that album.
Well, okay, yeah, Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast isn't great, but the title track, Adam Hart Mother, is phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's like Saucer Full of Secrets I love as an instrumental. And then you gotta remember this DNA goes all the way back to Sid with Interstellar Overdrive.
Exactly. That's
so
where all this grows in.
So by the time they were doing Division Bell, they're kind of getting back into that groove. Here they're not. And that's the cardinal sin, is like even the instrumentals aren't even interesting on here.
No.
So after Learning to Fly, we get the first song that purposely makes you think of an earlier Floyd album, and that's The Dogs of War. Now, the term Dogs of War is obviously reminiscent of World War II terminology, which makes you automatically think of Roger Waters. That's one. Two of Roger's big inspirations is his dad dying in World War II and Sid Barrett. And he's made billions off of that.
Yeah, he's made billions off of that trauma.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but with Dogs of War, here's again, this is a song that starts kind of promising, except it's recycling. It feels very much like Welcome to the Machine.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of Welcome to the Machine on here, by the way.
Yes, a lot of Welcome to the Machine. And again, he does it again with a song called A New Machine, Part 1 and 2. But then this album really starts falling apart with Dogs of War. The lyrics are god-awful. There's a sax solo for no fucking reason.
No, the 80s sax, man. What was it with the 80s and sax solos?
And this album sounds like Pink Floyd trying to make a Phil Collins era Genesis album, and that's probably what pisses me off the most.
Yeah, yes. Okay, I'm gonna read you some of these trite lyrics that there is here. May I do that, Joe?
Go right ahead.
Invisible transfers, long distance calls, hollow laughter in marble halls. Steps are taken, a silent uproar has unleashed the dogs of war. Fuck you. And the chorus, one world is a battleground. One world and we'll smash it down. One world. What are you trying to say? And
that's where you wish there's a gaping missing element in this whole thing, and that is the lyrics of Roger Waters. Now, Waters is not the strongest musician. In fact, he's probably the weakest of the band Pink Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
But the man can write a fucking song. He's up there with he's in my top 5 lyricists of all time.
Yeah, and you got to think too. Okay, so this is the other thing I want to talk about. What's going on here is that we said there's the music. I mean, you had the 3 guys essentially that were the music of Pink Floyd, and yet you got nothing like a Pink Floyd album, and you got this weird 80s. Like this is almost like.
That's why I said it was them doing a Collins Genesis era.
Yes.
This is like We Can't Dance kind of bullshit.
Right. And there was a lot of bands that did this in the 80s, and people question what was going on. Well, there was this evolution in the music and the sound, but it wasn't perfected.
Yeah.
And
that's technology, and it works. And here's the thing: there's a lot of that Phil Collins drum sound where it's very echoey on here.
Oh, that
sounds very
drum.
much like a drum machine.
Mm-hmm.
There's bands who utilize. It also feels like they're trying to do new wave. And here's the thing: there's bands that did it that don't sound as dated as this.
Yes,
Devo comes to mind, who utilized this kind of music. Blondie, Talking Heads.
They're not dated. This is you listen to this and you go, oh, that's a 1980s album, isn't it?
This is 1980s, the album. This is more 80s sounding than Neon Stainless Style.
Dude, I can play some Pink Floyd for my kids, and they have no idea what era it's from. But they heard me listen to this and that's from the 80s, isn't it, Dad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about One Slip, because you said this was one of your favorite songs. This is one of the songs I was running errands today, driving around, listening to this in my car, and when this came on, I nearly vomited in my own mouth.
Yeah, so there is something about this song, and maybe it's a little bit lyrically, okay? It's also the only song to me that the lyrics match the name of the damn album. Once I mean it's one slip down a hole we fall. It seems to take no time at all. A momentary lapse of reason that binds a life for life. A small regret you won't forget. There'll be no sleeping here tonight. Like that little bit, I can go, ooh, I hear some Floyd in there. Not necessarily musically, but a little bit lyrically. Like I hear even though he doesn't have writing credit for it, I hear some Wright in there. Like just the way that it's done. So there's, like I said, there's something in there. I could skip the verses and all the freaking weird ass shit they do, but whenever that chorus comes on, it's like, oh, okay, I like this chorus, and I think that's the only thing I can, when it comes to this album, I can really say is, yeah, I like the chorus to One Slip.
Yeah, but then it does this weird thing where it pretty much lifts from Michael Jackson's song Thriller. The breakdown with the bass, that sounds like it's like, a pick running up a string. Yeah. Yep. And what are you doing? Like listen, I haven't listened to this album in probably 20 plus years because it was really, I remember buying this and being excited to listen to it, and then this is one of those few albums that I've ever listened to where I felt embarrassed for the band. Mm-hmm. And me at like 15 was embarrassed for Pink Floyd. No.
Yeah, and we haven't even gotten to the side 2, which is the worst side of it yet.
Oh God! But before so One Slip, that weird Michael Jackson breakdown, it's just so jarring. The saxophone solos all over this fucking album.
It's one thing I don't think of when I think of Pink Floyd is saxophone solos.
Yeah, the one I can think of is in Money, and it works for that because when the sound of the brass gives it that edge with Money, like silver. Shit, God damn it, they just fucking shit the bed with this.
They really shit the bed with this. Now, I want to point out real quick that the writers of this album, okay, Gilmore's on everything, okay, but the other writers are Bob Ezrin, who worked on Signs of Life, which is just the instrumental with Nick Mason talking, by the way. Then you had Anthony Moore, Ezrin, and John Caron. Now, John Caron is of note because he also helped Roger Waters and
The Who. He worked with The Who.
Yep, and he worked with Gilmore solos. Yeah. Anthony Moore was a member of the band called Slap Happy and worked with Henry Cow.
I like Henry Cow, so.
Well, there you go. So Moore has credit on 3 of these songs.
Phil Manzanera, who was in Roxy Music, another band I like, because I love my Brian Eno.
Yep, I like Brian Eno too. I do. I'll admit that. Yeah, absolutely. And he did One Slip. And
let's talk about Patrick Leonard. Collaborations with Madonna gave us True Blue, Who's That Girl, and Like a Prayer.
Yeah. Yes.
That really makes me think Dark Side of the Moon. That makes me think metal with echoes.
Yeah, that even makes me think Final Cut, right? That even makes me think Animals. That makes me think any modern Pink Floyd album of the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is another, it feels like it's too many cooks in the kitchen with the songwriting. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, after One Slip, we get on the Turning Away, which I like, but then again, it's recycled. It basically feels like a recycled ballad. It feels like it was on the cutting room floor of The Wall. Yeah,
kind of. Now that you bring that up.
The Wall, or maybe even Animals, or like even Wish You Were Here, maybe. Like it feels like classic Floyd, but it feels recycled. Like it's like I like this better when it was the chorus to Comfortably Numb. Like I said earlier, but it's the only song that I wasn't violently angry with listening to.
Yeah,
I was not screaming in my car when this came on like the other songs.
I think what bothers me with On the Turning Away is it kind of has that crescendo, but it's hokey.
I mean, we're not talking about a great set of songs. Again, this is the weakest. So, Paul, let's get to side 2. Another movie.
Oh God, why is this even here?
Yes. Why is it here?
I don't know. Patrick Leonard decided he wanted to do something.
It's what did I write for this one? Should not be here. What the fuck?
Yeah, that was my take. I was like, immediately, like side 2 is bad. Like this whole side should have just been thrown out, and this should have just been an EP. Honestly, I don't think I'd hate this as much if it was just a 5-song EP.
Yeah, I would have been perfectly fine with this 5-song EP David Gilmer solo album.
Yeah.
But we get to this side, and it's weird. Because yet another movie, it's over 6 minutes long, and it's highly forgettable. And then you get Round and Around.
Which is like the worst instrumental. Like, I should like it. I'm like, it's a Pink Floyd instrumental. I should like it. No, I don't.
No, and that goes right into a New Machine Part 1, which I put in my notes, is the music you hear when you're having a stroke.
Yeah, it's bad. Okay, first of all, it doesn't. It's supposed to sound like it, but that weird vocal synthesizer just sounds off.
Oh God, yeah. And again, this makes you think. Welcome to the Machine from Wish You Were Here. It's like they're loading these song titles up to make you think Pink Floyd. It's Floyd in name only, and this is this in the final cut. I would argue are not Pink Floyd albums. And I like the final cut, but it's a Roger Waters solo album. And this is a David Gilmour solo album. They're just selling this under the banner of Pink Floyd, which is just gross. And now we get Terminal Frost, which I put in my notes. It sounds like theme music from an 80s sports movie.
Dude, I shit you not, I had the same thing.
Yes. And then my other note was fucking sax solos.
It sounds like it needs to be in an 80s fucking football movie or baseball movie or hockey movie. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was thinking like a hockey movie or football. God,
this is like Slapshot 2.
Yeah.
A piece of shit song to go to a piece of shit sequel.
Oh my God.
And the fact that it's bookended in the weirdest way by New Machine Part 1 and a New Machine Part 2, which are the dumbest things. I have always been here. I have always been behind these eyes. What are you trying to say? Are you sneakily saying you've always been in Pink Floyd, Gilmer? Because you haven't. You haven't, Gilmer.
Yeah. Come on, Gilmer.
Come on, Gilmer. Get on the bus, Gilmer.
Yeah. Get us so angry, sounding like we're having strokes or seal.
Your song's giving me a stroke, Gilmer. Get back to the guitar solos and cut out the sax shit.
Oh God! And then this ends with Sorrow, an 8-minute song that again is pretty forgettable. And I will say I did like kind of the intro to this song. I like the kind of the guitar work. And this is the guitar work I want to get, because when we were in high school, the defenders of this album were always like, well, the solos are awesome.
No.
When I listen to music, I don't care how fucking impressive your guitar work is. If I don't feel anything, and then if I don't feel anything, if it doesn't add to the music, I don't care. Like, I'm not impressed with technical players a lot of the time. Like, I've seen Joe Satriani live. I couldn't name you one song because it's technical prowess, and yeah, it's impressive, but I don't want to listen to it.
Yep.
Like, if you can thing with Gilmer.
Gilmer.
He's such an emotive guitarist. He's such a dreamlike guitarist, and he makes you feel things even on the final cut, his solos on there like wrench your soul, and we don't get it here. And it's technically impressive what he's doing, but I don't give a shit because again, I don't give a shit about technical prowess when it comes to bands. I get more emotion of like say the Ramones yelling, "Hey ho, let's go," than I would out of fucking Steve Vai.
Okay, I was gonna bring up Steve Vai because there is some Steve Vai that I like, right? Because there are some songs where he does that solo and stuff. I mean, it's kind of some of his 80s stuff is 80s. Yeah, when I hear Gilmour, I want to hear that guitar in a structure that works, and I don't feel like any of these structures are working. The problem with this album, I think musically, if it makes any sense, is it's too loose. It doesn't. Yeah. There's nothing really. There's no good connective tissue in the songs.
Yeah, and with guitar solos, it's a compliment to. It shouldn't be the song. You know, like Comfortably Numb works because it's a great compliment to like how the song is going. It reflects the lyrics. You know what I mean? Even when you go to like Mother on the Wall, it's like a pretty simple guitar solo, but he bends those notes to make you feel something. You know, when it comes to guitarists, like say I like Stevie Ray Vaughan a lot because he gets more emotion out of like 2 notes than Steve Vai or Satriani will get out of like 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's important to me, and that's just me. Like if you love technical music, that's fine. I'm not going to shit on it. It's just for me, that's not what I'm interested in when I'm approaching music.
Yep, and I'll tell you this: I actually do enjoy some of that technical stuff, but I go in knowing like technical. But when I hear Gilmore, it's not just, man, that Gilmore solo is amazing. No, it's the things that led. Like when I think about Comfortably Numb, it was the build up to that solo, and then that solo pushed it over the edge, and then it came back down a little bit, and then it built up to the second solo. Same thing with with the song "Dogs" from Animals, not Dogs of War, mind you. Fuck that, but Dogs. The technical guitar work is amazing and more noteworthy because the song itself has that good, strong, as I said earlier, connective tissue.
Yeah, it's complementing it. It's building off the song, which is another important thing with guitar solos. And on this album, it feels like the guitar solos are just there to be there. Like they don't really build off anything. They're just like, hey, I can do this, and like that's fine, I guess, but I don't care. Again, it's like
right.
If you're not leading me somewhere, and especially with Pink Floyd, because Pink Floyd's such a dreamlike band with like, you know, very heavy topics, at least before this sack of shit came out. You know, and like themes and like the guitar work built on those themes, and Rick Wright's piano work built off these themes, and it was just like great. And then you get this, and it's fun. How many songs? It's like 11 songs of like synth pop nonsense. And I like synth pop, and this makes
you and I like synth pop.
Yeah, and this makes synth pop look terrible. Yeah. So not only did it make Pink Floyd look bad, it made synth pop look bad, and they should feel bad for doing this.
I completely agree with you. And then you end on Sorrow, which is just fuck. I'm so out by the time Sorrow comes in.
No, again, the side 2, I don't know what it was attempting. It looked like they were trying to do a medley type thing.
It's a bad medley though. It's not connect. Like I said, it's not connected. There's no musical theme between it.
No, but like there's songs clocking in at 38 seconds, minute, less than 2 minutes. Remember when the Beatles did that on Abbey Road? Let's do that, but like do it completely wrong.
See, I think this is more of. I think Gilmore had some solo stuff like Learning to Fly, One Slip, On the Turning Away. I think he had some of that stuff already kind of in his mind. And I do feel like that this should have been an EP, but again, the record company wanted a Pink Floyd album, not a Pink Floyd EP. And I feel like that when they came in, they had this thing, and then they have to do another 25 minutes. They had nothing. You know, the truth is, things weren't good with Wright. I mean, wasn't it Gilmore's wife that had to ask him?
No, Wright's wife asked if he could play on it, and he's been, you know, I believe at this time he's sober, but he's just like, you know, he hasn't played in a long time. Mason's barely on it. Like Gilmore was just not impressed with their playing style, which when your 2 other music collaborators in the band are not even on all the songs, this is not a Pink Floyd album then. It's just not. No, this is David Gilmour's solo album featuring members of Pink Floyd.
Album, really, to my mind. It's the Gilmore. Now, here's what pisses me off. In 2016, Nick Shilton chose Momentary Last the Reason as one of the top 10 essential 80s prog rock albums for prog. That's like, I don't know what this guy is on.
Well, he's a chucklehead, Paul. He suffers from severe chuckleheadinitis. So if Nick Shilton, if you hear this, yeah, go fuck yourself.
Nick Shilton.
Come on, Gilmer.
Come on, Gilmer. You ain't shit. Get on the bus.
So yeah, it wasn't really, and the thing is, I'm reading up on it. Like Gilmer presented as a return to older Pink Floyd sound, which is bullshit. It's not. He's trying to sound contemporary of the times, which that doesn't work. Especially if you're an older band who already have an established sound. It just I don't mind bands taking a chance musically, like try something out of left field, but that wasn't this. This was them trying to make a hit album. And when you're trying to make a hit album, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't. No, you can't be trying. You got to be in the moment. You talk about these things that they go, man, they came in there, they did this thing. This was, I think, ego is what this was. The problem with this is it was record interference. It was Gilmore's ego to try and prove something to Waters. And there was too much negativity all around this, and that I think really took everyone out of the creation process.
If this was sold as a Gilmore solo album, I think it wouldn't be the fan base probably wouldn't be as negative about it. But when you put Pink Floyd's name on it, and it falls under par, and it's because of it's basically a solo album. Again, there's a reason why people don't like the final cut. It's not a Pink Floyd album. This is not a Pink Floyd album. These two kind of is a weird era where they released two solo albums under the guise of Floyd.
I will say Final Cut felt more like a Pink Floyd album to me than this one did. Like if I had to compare and go, man, which one's closer to being a Pink Floyd album? Hands down, it's going to be the Final Cut.
Yep, my opinion is neither. Neither sound like a Floyd album. They just don't. This is their weakest album out of their whole catalog. And they don't have the strongest catalog. And I say that as this is one of my favorite bands.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. Because when you go over their body of work, the positivities outweigh the negativities. Now, I was going to circle back and say, at one time didn't recommend Music by the Elder. I take that back after listening to this album. Like, this album is atrocious. It's so bad that I go, man, you know what? I forgot how bad this was and like what really bad music is out there. I had no right shitting on Music from the Altar as bad as I did.
No. You can hate both albums equally. And again, what's the common thread between that and these two terrible albums? It's Bob Ezrin. Mm-hmm. I don't know enough about Bob Ezrin's collaboration on this as I do with the Kiss one, because Kiss have been pretty open about his drug abuse and all that.
Yes.
When it comes to Floyd, it's harder to get information. Gilmore's he's not a talkative guy. He's just a quiet guy, so it's hard to get a lot of information out of him. Of the band, Waters is probably the most vocal about the processes, and he's not on this album, so...
Right.
And that's where most of the information of the lawsuit comes out of is Roger Waters.
Is Roger Waters, not Gilmore.
Yeah.
Gilmore basically said there's a better balance between the music and lyrics than on later albums. Waters said of the albums, I think it's very quite clever forgery. The songs are poor in general. The lyrics I can't quite believe. Gilmore's lyrics are third rate. Wright later said Waters' criticisms were fair.
Yeah, I've read interviews with Gilmore where he's not entirely thrilled with how this album came out either. But it's like a transitional time for them to actually kind of go back and being a stronger musical band. And I'll say that with when I listen to Division Bell, musically it sounds stronger than even up at with even like The Wall. I would say that a lot of the music-wise, it's stronger. It's just, conceptually, it's not as strong as Waters. And that's the thing that would make Pink Floyd such a great dynamic was the vision, the lyrics combined with the music. So you can have the most interesting music in the world, but you're not engaging me with the words, don't have them on there then.
Right.
I mean, Gilmore he never found a strong lyrical replacement for Waters. He went to his wife. She's an author, but she's, she doesn't have like that chip on her shoulder, I think, that Waters had. And she leaned more heavily into like the dreamy elements and the surreal and, whatever. I see why people like Division Bell. It's still not like I said, Endless River is my favorite because it doesn't have any lyrics except for the last song, and I just stop when that one starts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be very honest. I did not like the final Pink Floyd album. I listened to it once and was like, I never need to hear it again.
Yeah,
it was really, it was depressing to me is what it was. Because, and even Division Bell, like to me, as a Pink Floyd fan, Momentary, Lapse of Reason, Division Bell, and that final album are reminders of where the band went and I'm just constantly going where they could have gone. And I know that's very much how people felt about the Beatles too. White Album was very, very, very divisive at the time.
Yeah, it's 4 solo albums on one.
Basically. But yeah, I listen to these albums and all I can think of is, man, what didn't we get? What didn't we get?
Well, let me clue you in on something. Listening to Radio Chaos from Waters, even if he was in this band and they did this, we're not missing out on much.
No, I don't mind. I'll be honest with you. I like Radio Chaos much more than this.
I think they're both equally garbage. I'm not a big fan of Waters solo stuff outside of Pros and Cons and the Final Cut. That's right. I'm calling Final Cut a solo album.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's totally fair.
The last album he did, I liked from a few years ago.
Yes. I'm a fan of Pros and Cons, Radio Chaos, and Amused to Death.
Well, you just said you're a fan of all his solo albums.
Well, no, he did a couple other, but
no, he didn't. He did
yes,
like an opera.
Oh yeah, he did the opera. That's right.
Yeah, that's not really a solo album. You just said you're a fan of all his solo albums.
Okay, fine. I'm a fan of Roger Waters' solo. I feel like I get more Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I don't get a whole lot of anything from, especially those 80s solo albums he did. That last one he did, I really enjoyed. But I felt like that was him more coming into his own. He's finally escaped the Floyd sound and expectations with that last one, where Radio Chaos and Amused to Death, it felt like he was still leaning heavy on that, trying to make a Floyd sounding album without Floyd. Again, these guys they were better together than apart.
Yes, this is okay. Comparing the Beatles again, because these are two very comparable bands. Roger Waters to me was the John Lennon, and I don't like a lot of John Lennon's solo stuff, but there's things lyrically that I enjoy, right? When I say I like Amused to Death, there's maybe 4 or 5 songs that I listen to lyrically and I go, wow, he makes sense. When I look at the overall story that Radio Chaos is telling, I'm like, wow, I like that story. Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking is just phenomenal in my mind. I'm sorry. The combination of Roger Waters' lyrics with Eric Clapton's guitar work is magical.
Yeah, I love Pros and Cons.
Yeah, and let's just bring that up real quick here. Let's talk about the Pros and Cons. Pros and Cons was Roger Waters after Animals locked himself in a hotel room and came out with 2 albums and said, we're either going to do The Wall or we're going to do Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. And the band went, the Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking is way too personal. We're going to do The Wall.
And funny thing, Gilmer liked Pros and Cons better. He just said he voted for The Wall because it was stronger musically for him. He thought when they did that vote, Gilmore went with The Wall just because it would be more for him to contribute with. And I think that was the right call.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, Joe. Jesus Christ, can we end this nightmare? Can we?
So, Paul, would you recommend A Momentary Lapse of Reason?
I would rather have you take the actual CD album and try to shove it up my ass than to listen to this again.
You know what, Paul? I would not suggest this album.
And yeah, so far Ezrin is 0 for 2 with us.
Yeah, he's getting a real beating, and I'm starting to really question his productions.
Just a little bit. We might have to dig in. We might do an Ezrin month. Maybe we should think about that, like at some point. Do Bob Ezrin month, because I think we owe it to that.
Well, at least we could do The Wall and Kiss's Destroyer and actually listen to some good fucking music by these two bands.
That's a good point. So yeah, no, that's 2 no's. Stay away from it. Really, honestly, stay away from anything. And anything after, really anything after The Wall. I mean, you can listen to Final Cut, but it's not going to be Pink Floyd.
No. If you like the music, if you like Gilmore's playing and Richard Wright's playing, Division Bell and Endless River, there's something there for you. So I'll give that caveat with that. I mean, it's I really like Wright's playing on Endless River. Okay. I actually listened to that again for the first time not too long ago, and I was actually pretty impressed.
Okay.
And I wondered why a lot of this fell on the cutting room floor, but I wasn't there. And again, Gilmore's notoriously tight-lipped with things, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Gilmore is a bastard that way.
Yeah, he's passive. Like, he always ends up looking good in like the War of Words with Waters because he's very passive aggressive. Where Waters doesn't hold punches back, so he always ends up looking like the dick. But these two both are on the Mount Rushmore of assholes in rock history.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's with those 2 albums. Yeah, I can see elements on there that you can appreciate. This album and the Final Cut are the 2 albums I would say really don't belong in the catalog. They're just not Floyd albums. They are they're solo albums masquerading, and it's too bad because on their own as solo albums they'd be a lot stronger, I'd say. But coming with the baggage of Pink Floyd, that comes with expectations, and they both fell short of the glory.
Yeah. All right. Yes.
So that's enough of this piece of shit album, Paul.
I mean, I can't disagree with you in any what you said.
But I really love Final Cut, and I think it has some of Gilmore's really fine guitar playing.
Oh, and if you
the song The Final Cut is probably one of Roger Waters' strongest songs.
I used to do that for karaoke, actually.
That's awesome. You should do a cover of that.
I should. If we can get the YouTube channel to 100 subscribers, because I still want to hit that 50 mark. By the way, if we can get the YouTube channel to 50 subscribers, I'm going to do You and I cover from Twin Peaks. And we get to 100, I will happily do a Final Cut cover. So those are 2 things on the table.
That was something, huh?
That was
I feel
something.
Like we exercised a lot of demons we've had about this album.
Kinda.
I think this has had the more F-bombs dropped.
Yeah. I mean, especially by you. You tend to be a little bit more reserved on the F-bombs. Me, I just let them fly. But
this album just rubs me the wrong way, man. Like it's like I get like you've seen Full Metal Jacket.
Oh,
I get that 1,000-yard stare when I think about this album.
Yes, and I think having listened to it all this week and being angry, there was a lot of catharsis here of just venting our frustration over it, especially since, again, you and I, this is our hated album. We know it was hated, but it's been a long time since either of us listening to it, and then going back to it and being like, even worse, like it's aged like piss water.
Yeah, no,
it has not aged well at all.
All right, Paul, what do you have coming up?
So, yes, we are going to have the first episode of Stranger Things coming up. I am in the process of editing that. I am we'll be recording this week of this podcast. The next episode of Cast That Movie as well. So yeah, what do you guys have going on over at the Joedown?
What movie are you guys casting again?
Oh, we are casting Bug.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, Bug with Ashley Judd and
Michael Shannon.
Michael Shannon. Yeah.
It's funny you guys are doing this because I just rewatched, not rewatched, I watched for the first time all the way through Boardwalk Empire, and Michael Shannon is in that, and he's such a phenomenal actor.
I personally love, if you want to see something amazing, if you haven't done it, check out his Funny or Die that he did of the sorority house letter. If you have not seen this, it's amazing. Like, I'm just laughing thinking about it. There was a controversial letter years ago. The story was that the sorority put out, just calling out, and it was his email that got leaked out and caused this huge controversy for this college and the sorority house itself. And Michael Shannon reads it verbatim.
Is it on par with the Gilbert Godfrey reading 50 Shades of Grey?
Different level. I love that too. Especially at the end. God, this is hot. But just, I mean, he goes full Zod. Like, he hasn't even been casted as Zod yet. He goes full Zod in this.
He's an intense actor. Like, that's why I love him. And so, the week we're recording this, the Joe Down, we just put out our review of Tango and Cash, the 1989 Sylvester Stallone, Kurt Russell clusterfuck movie. A movie that, when I started reading into it, I'm surprised that it hasn't been done as a cashless movie.
Well, okay, so I'm going to talk about that. It was on the docket. It was on the docket for season 1 at some point.
Because the production of that
the production, but the writing. Okay, so you have to understand that this was going to be a different movie entirely.
With Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes, it was supposed to be a completely different movie. And it's just not what it was. And then really, once Stallone got involved, he went full Cobra on it.
Yeah, rewriting the script every day.
Yes. And that, so I know all about it because it was one of the things I was researching for it. So I was so excited when you guys did it.
It's something else. Holy shit. But I love Kurt Russell and I love James Hong, so at least it has that in it.
Yeah, I remember my parents rented it immediately when it came out on VHS.
But yeah, after that, then we're on a hiatus.
Okay.
It's just Brown's busy season, so.
Well, that's interesting because I was going to bring up an idea to you as well. And I thought, much like Cast That Movie, we could do, well, I'll talk to you about it off air and then you can make a yes or no. I don't want to put anything out there. So ask me, Joe, what are we doing next week?
Oh, it's your album pick, man.
Mm-hmm. It is my album pick.
What are you picking?
I need a break from the bad, dude. I really need a break from the bad.
Oh, you'll pay for this. Don't think you won't pay.
We are going to do what I think might be the greatest concept album ever made. We are going to do The Lamb Lays Down on Broadway by Genesis, the final album with Peter Gabriel. Yeah,
I'm not familiar with a lot of the Genesis stuff. I'm a huge solo Peter Gabriel fan.
Yeah, me too.
Like
I used to do Red Rain for karaoke.
Yeah, the So album is so fucking phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
But his first couple solo albums are just so great and weird. I love them. But I just never got into Genesis. Probably just the memories of I Can't Dance bullshit, the Phil Collins stuff. I just Blame you, Phil. Blame you for a momentary lapse of reason.
We're gonna talk about it because we are gonna do. I think I'm gonna be bringing out, not in a row, obviously, but at time I'm gonna be bringing out different Genesis albums. And there is actually one non-Gabriel album that is amazing.
I don't believe you.
There is.
I think you're a dirty liar. I think this is Trump levels of delusion. Are you being held hostage, Paul?
You can't see me
Collins have
blinking
a gun to
twice.
your head.
You can't see me blinking twice. No, actually there is, and we will dive into it at some point. I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to say anything because I want you to hear it when we do it. But now I'm going to warn you, audience as well. This is like a 98-minute album, so there's going to be a lot to discuss.
All right, I look forward to it.
So, but I'm interested to see your opinion of it as a concept album, having never, you've never heard it, correct?
Nope, never have.
Okay. I'm really interested to see your take on it.
Well,
So,
I mean, if it's Peter Gabriel, I'm all on board, man.
I honestly think you're really going to like it. And I think the audience, if you guys haven't listened to it, I would encourage you to listen to these albums before we do it and then see if our take matches with your take. Please. And again, get us to 50 subscribers, get us to 100 subscribers. Joe, fuck it. You take us out of here. I'm brain dead.
Paul, you see, the dogs of war.